Whether the weather's hot or it's not, I think it's always the perfect time for chilies and for chilled soups. So what better than combining them in the Consuming Passions chilled chili tomato soup? Great vegetarian fare for just about any time of year. The process quite naturally starts with the tomatoes. I do prefer to prepare this recipe in the summer when tomatoes are at their ripest and should be at their cheapest. I use about 1 kilo of ripe tomatoes, as ripe as possible, to serve 4 people. And I begin by skinning them by putting them in boiling water for just a minute or so, before transferring them to cold water and peeling. To save the trouble, you could use canned tomatoes for this. Once peeled, they're chopped up and sprinkled with a couple of teaspoons of sugar and a tiny sprinkling of salt. Now, in a large pan, I put a generous couple of tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil and toss in some diced zucchini. They will provide flavour, texture and colour. Now, I reserve some for adding later. These are then cooked gently for a few minutes. I've got all up about 350 grams of zucchini in here, and the younger the better. I don't want them to be too floury. An optional extra, some garlic, a couple of cloves, which are just pounded into a paste, or you could use bought processed garlic. I also add a generous quantity of finely chopped red chilli, or you could use a little chilli paste. I like my chilled chili tomato really hot, even though it's cold, if you understand. Liquid time. I add the chopped tomatoes to the pan, and then some vegetable stock, 1 litre or so. Now, another optional extra, I like to use semi-dried tomatoes, not those dreadful so-called sun-dried tomatoes, which are crispy and taste of very little. Semi-dried are much better, and they probably are not imported. Now, a substitute for these would be tomato paste, about 1 tablespoon to give some depth and colour to the soup. Now the chili tomato is beginning to take shape. It's left to simmer at that very slow bloop, bloop rate for around half an hour. Then it's refrigerated until required. Just before serving, I prepare some final toppings. Some fresh basil. Of course, basil is at its peak when tomatoes are. This has been washed and drained and then shredded thinly with a very sharp knife. It's good to be careful not to bruise it too much. And do this shortly before serving. Another great addition to this soup is grated lemon rind, one of the great miracle foods. I think grated rinds work so well to make many otherwise bland dishes into something quite spectacular. Though, of course, there's nothing bland about the Consuming Passions chilled chili tomato soup. Again, it's a good idea to grate the rind just before serving. If you are doing it in advance, you can store it under a little oil to stop it drying out. When it's time to serve, I stir the reserved chopped zucchini through the chilled soup. They provide an agreeable crunch. And then stir through the lemon rind and some pepper. I like to use some finely ground white pepper in this dish. And that's almost it. Was that easy, or was that easy? Yes, indeed it was. Degree of difficulty, extra low. Preparation time, about 25 minutes. Hands-on work is involved. And keepability, it keeps several days in the refrigerator. The soup is served in individual bowls or dishes, possibly on top of an affectation of parsleyed ice cubes. There it goes, the luscious chili, tomato, zucchini soup. A little topping, a swirl of olive oil, a splosh of natural yoghurt, and a sprinkling of the finely chopped basil. And the dish is complete. The Consuming Passions chilled chili tomato soup. The perfect wine companion, I think. An aromatic Riesling would be superb. From Consuming Passions, till next time, bon appetit.